So that was something that was quite important in our lives for quite some times. Were music jams here at our house.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. My son remembers that and my love for music and is saying, Mom, look into this. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, I'm Betti Brockman.
And Larry Brockman.
How long have you lived in McCauley?
Thank goodness we talked about this just before. 35 years.
Have you always lived in this very house?
Oh, I get to answer that one? No, I can't even figure out the exact number of years that we've lived in this house, but I know that it's at least 28 years because Jeffrey was born in the house, so and that kind of represents his age.
And what led you to live in McCauley?
I guess there's two different stories. I'll tell my story. Initially, I came to Edmonton to join a Scarborough Foreign Mission Society lay formation house. And that's kind of how I got introduced into Edmonton. And the choice there was to be in the urban core because that's where the, I guess, justice issues were most obvious. And so that's where I came initially. I didn't stay in that community, but later on when Betti and I moved to Edmonton, that's where my contacts were, that's where the people that I'd been involved with were. And there was an ongoing interest in being in that part of the city that sort of represented the justice issues.
For me, this was all a new adventure. I had none of the connections that Larry had from previous years, so it was a very new journey for me. But I like to embrace the vision and the thoughts around it and the goals of creating a better place and a better world. And what we saw were some struggling people. I spent most of my years as a mom at home and sometime working with the Beau McCauley Health Center. Have some stories around that, but we'll get into that soon, I'm sure.
Did you come to McCauley together or did you meet here?
Shortly after we were married, this was the place that we started from together, yes, as a new married couple.
And how many children do you have?
We have 4 boys.
And what was it like raising a family in this area?
Well, I can say that one of the important things that I see now in retrospect is that the importance of having connections, community, and support for each other. So we grew up as, started off initially as a couple in a community house where we were 3 couples. And then as the children arrived, shortly thereafter, had our own homes, but still very, very connected and very supportive of each other. So that I would cite as being one of the biggest importance of living in any kind of a community is having that support with one another.
Yeah, and I would really just sort of add a check mark to that. I think that's the things that have really been critical for us over the years. And having that support of other people that are in similar circumstances, having children similar ages, and having been part of some of the various struggles that the neighborhood has faced over the years.
Why did you choose to stay in this neighborhood?
I would like to say that our connectedness was here with people. It was very strong. It started off, as I say, as a new venture, and it just grew with time. And even as we sit here today and think of downsizing, we're getting older and we don't need a home with many rooms, thinking about where would we go? The roots are so strong here, where we have started 35 years ago and just living within a couple of blocks of one another. And it is very strongly rooted. It is our family. So that sums it up for me.
So you if you downsize, you see yourself staying in this area?
We've thought about it, talked about it, and you know what? We always come back to staying in this house. We've done a whole lot of work in this house, and the people in Neighbourhood, and yes. So I think we're rooted in so many ways, in home, in the home that we live in, but also in relationships.
Mm-hmm. How have you seen the area change over the 35 years that you've lived here? It's a big question, I know.
Yeah, since there's a bit of dead air space, I'll respond first. I think for me, one of the big things that in the early days there was really quite a strong sense of the danger of essentially the neighborhood just being bulldozed down. At that point, the downtown was expanding, and what we were seeing across the tracks in Boyle Street was that the number of, I'll say, owner-occupied homes was dropping dramatically, and that was beginning to impact the community and who lived there, and just how much ownership there was within Boyle Street. And that was starting to roll across the tracks as there were signs of a lot more homes being bought out as rental properties by absentee landlords. And what we've seen over the years, I think, is really quite a stabilization of home ownership. That there is a core of people who really feel that it's their community, and some of that is about owning their own homes in the community. Other parts of that is about people being around for a long time and just having those roots. So I think one of the big things is I think there is a much stronger sense of community. And historically there have been a variety of issues that the community has faced over the years. At one point, the Edmonton transportation plan that was on the books was almost turning Wall Street and McCauley into freeways. And that issue was dealt with. Probably the most challenging as residents of the community is when the police station, the new site, was built downtown. The result of that was that prostitution was pushed away from the 96th Street area and pushed up into the communities of McCauley and Boyle Street, and that kind of was a very, very powerful impact on the community, and I think one of the longest struggles that we've ever faced.
Yeah, the area is not free of its struggles, and I can cite the changes over the 35 years of the difference in the struggles, where we did begin with, let's say, Lysol users, and that became the first issue that we encountered, and then next is prostitution, and what we see today is drug users, which is across the board. You know, you see a sector population that's involved in the Lysol user for sure, and then the prostitution is yet another, but the drug users are of all sex, all lifestyles, so that's varied and it's rampant. And what I see is it's not only this area, it's many areas in the city that is affected by that. What I find particularly true with this area is the amount of support and the rallying that happens around that and working together on the issues, which is very, very positive. I don't think any community is without its issues and its struggles, but I think the far important factor is how people gather around and work together on this problem and whether or not that's happening.
McCauley has sort of a public perception by people outside the area because of these issues that you've mentioned. That seems to be the focus in the media and such. So there's a lot of people who have a perception of the area that it's dangerous, that it's dirty, that it's unsafe, that it's really, if they were to spend a lot of time here, they would be taking, you know, a risk with their safety. How would you respond to somebody who would say that to you?
Well, I think for myself, I think the difference is McCauley, it's in your face. Like, it's not hidden behind some nice facade of a nice home. But I do think that the problems are still there elsewhere. It's just behind a closed door. And so what I like to see is if it's going to be there, it's out there and you can work on it and address it. There are no surprises. So I have never been afraid. I can't say never been afraid, we are always presented with challenges in our lives, and how we work through it is the importance of that. And so I think it's a struggle that we face, all of us face every day, and just trying to find the answers of what they are, and whether we work together on it or within ourselves, what the solution might be for us.
My response is that often people associate the problems with the central neighborhoods, but the way I view the world is the problems of poverty, alcohol, drug abuse, prostitution are not rooted in individual communities. Those are systemic society issues. We just happen to be, at many points, the marketplace. But the people that participate come from a variety of places. They're not residents of the inner city generally. They're folks that come here to access those services. So I guess what it's important to remind people is it's not really just our problem. It's a problem that's rooted in society in general. And you can't blame it on Wall Street and McCauley. It's as much a problem of the suburbs as it is of the inner city.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to a young family who's considering moving to McCauley?
Okay. You know, if you're considering that, get to know your neighbors, get to know the people around you, and really, because in the long term, whether you're in this community or in any other community, you need to know the people around you. You need to have those connections. And so often, if people are buying a house, they tend to look at the house, but how many people walk down the block and meet the people that are going to live around them? Somehow that gets missed in the picture, and I think that's one of the important things is if you're coming into a community, you have to come in knowing that there's people there that you're comfort with and that you can have relationships with in the long term.
And I just want to add is get involved. As much as you put into, that's what you get out of it. So it's become a very crucial and important part in our life, the connectedness that we have with folks here.
Mm-hmm.
Investment.
Is McCauley a place that you would recommend young families to move?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I really would. And what I really, really like for young kids, and I see in the summer, is the park. There's been a lot of revitalization done with Giovanni Capote Park, and just to be able to sit in our chairs and enjoy the view of young families just playing in the summer. And it's not just summer though, it's the winter and the soccer games, and yes, it's a lot of life.
What else would you like people who are watching this to know? I'll just open the microphone to anything that you'd like to say.
I'm going to add a little bit on to Betty's in terms of the neighborhood. We've gone visiting our kids in other cities, and what really blows me away is that we have access to so much, and it's really within walking distance. People drive all the way across the city to go to places like Italian Center Shops and Lucky 97 and many Zoccolos, be part of many things that are happening in this community. And for us, it's there. It's part of our community. Part of a very vibrant community. And as any community, it has its challenges, and people need to be prepared to deal with those challenges, but that's no different than the suburbs.
And the only other thing I would say is don't be afraid. It's in fear that we hand the torch to someone else. So take control of your life and come and enjoy it.